You know, one of the most common complaints we hear from clients is that they're stressed about money. They don't think they have enough of it. They grew up in a family where they had certain beliefs around it, and they just feel like they either can't get enough or they feel guilty about spending the money they have. So we wanted to make a video because it's something that we had to work through as well about money anxiety and how money anxiety is not about money. It's about your beliefs about money and the beliefs you have. My name is Jim.
This is Ennis.
And we're Inner Solutions, a company dedicated to creating mental health resources to help you live a better life and give you tips and advice that actually work. So today we're going to talk about money anxiety.
So as Jim said, with money, it's less about how much you have and your exact situation. Of course, those matter and make a big impact. But when it really comes to those feelings that come up when you look at your bank account, or you look at other people spending money, or you look at your bills, the feelings are all generated by the thoughts that you're having in that moment. The thoughts about the money itself, the thoughts about you, your ability to make money. For example, let's say that you're somebody who you believe if you were to get fired today, you could easily get another job because of whatever reason. Or if you wanted to, you could quit and go find another job fairly quickly. Maybe you believe that you have the ability to go back to school and finish your education, or maybe get a different degree altogether. Maybe you feel like you have the ability to start a business, and it's just a matter of, putting some things together and creating that additional side income, that side hustle. If you believe those things about you, then money will naturally be less intimidating. You're going to feel less anxiety about spending it, and you'll feel less anxiety about seeing other people spend it, because you have that core belief of, I can make more money if needed. On the other hand, let's say that you're somebody who feels, you know what, I could never start my own business. I could never go back to school. If I got fired, I have no idea what I would do. Then you feel naturally more stuck. If you see some other people spending money, or you get a big bill in the mail, it's going to create a lot of anxiety because of that. So in this video that we're going to be presenting, the essence of what we're trying to say is, when you adjust your own beliefs about what's possible for you, it takes care of a lot of those anxieties. And furthermore, even if you're in a situation where getting a new job is tough, or going back to school is tough, there are still a lot of other beliefs that people carry about money, about shame, guilt, different fears about what will happen if they spend it. And all of that comes from the way we grow up, the society we grow up, and our own internal ideas. And so, of course, having more money and getting a great financial situation is a part of that process. But we have found that before that even happens, for most people, they really need to get their whole financial mindset in alignment with that. Because otherwise, it'll just make it very difficult for you to invest in yourself. You'll feel like going back to school and spending money on school won't make any sense, because why bother? You might feel like quitting that job and taking a bit of a risk is just not going to work out, because why bother? You might feel like you need a therapist or just a book that can help you. And I've had people say, this $24 book, it might help me, but $24 is a lot right now. I don't even want to spend that. And what happens with that mentality is you really kind of get yourself stuck. I mean, not to sound dramatic, but if you get your mindset right, you really can go out and make a few extra $100 a month. $200-$300 extra a month can happen with just a little bit of creativity, a little bit of going out there. And I mean, there's a lot of these days with all the gigs and the side hustles, it is possible. And that extra $200-$300 can make the difference between having a therapist or not, maybe taking night classes or not, getting a new job or not. But without that mindset of this is possible for me, you won't even do those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to kind of echo some of what Ennis said, and even expand upon the $200 or $300 with a different mindset you could make. I mean, there's really no limit to what you could do extra. And so some of these blocks that people have, first of all, let's say, well, we're not financial advisors, nor is this a financial advice video. This is a video about, there's a million budgets you can do. There's a million ways to write down what's happening. What we want to discuss is when you're avoiding your budget, when you're, spending frivolous money, why you feel like you're stuck and things like that. Because if you feel like you're stuck, that's going to manifest into your real world. Whereas, like Ennis was saying, if you feel like, well, money is currency, just like trade, just like, verbal acknowledgement, just like nonverbal acknowledgement. There's all kinds of currency in the world. Yet money seems to be the one that people stress about most. Money seems to be the one that can give the most opportunity, but can also feel like it's the most weight. And we do have a financial system set up where it's meant to kind of prey on the emotions of those, to overextend themselves, to keep them trapped in a cyclical way of being that's overspending or too much emphasis on the material.
Constantly wanting more.
Yeah, constantly wanting more. Or, advertising and marketing companies are meant to apply to your emotions, to make you feel like you need, or that you there's some kind of opportunity there that might not be completely true. So we talk a lot about how the foundation of this video is, what are your beliefs about money? And so the best way to start talking about how do you find out what some of your beliefs are about money is to talk about some common negative beliefs about money. So let's riff a little bit on what are some things you can catch yourself doing that are a common belief. And the first one for me that comes to mind is a jealousy, or a kind of I don't want to say poor man's mindset, but basically there's not enough to go around mindset, meaning you see somebody who's being doing really successfully, and you feel like jealous, or you feel like they might have done, you feel kind of a negative emotion towards it in general. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good indicator that there's some form of there's not enough to go around mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's a really big one. I think another common one for me is just any time that I want something, there is almost like an anxiety about, I want this, but I feel like if I spend the money on it, then that's just money lost. I'm never going to be able to make that up again. It's going to hit my savings permanently, and there's just never going to be any like good that comes out of it. And so it feels like this permanent loss, as opposed to an investment.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, okay, I'll go back to school and spend $10,000 on school, but that'll allow me to make an extra $20,000 next year.
Right.
So, and then every year after that. So why wouldn't I do that? Those kinds of feelings of not seeing the investment and just seeing it as a total loss, that can keep me fairly stuck pretty often.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are definitely two really big ones. There's some other common kind of indicators of how you feel about money is equating money with status. Mm-hmm. So like, or equating money with self-worth. How much money I have is, shows, my grandeur, my bravado, or any kind of nonsense like that. That's something that I continue to have to manage in myself as far as comparative. And unfortunately, with things like social media, it's easy to see snapshots of what other people are going through without having the whole story. And so when we get in that comparative mindset, or that link to money with self-worth, that's a pretty good indicator that that's going to be a kind of bottomless pit of that you're going to be trying to fill emotionally. Yeah. Meaning like, maybe you may hit, with a house of this stature or something like that, but that mindset of like, when I just get this house, I'll feel better. When I just, make this much, I'll feel better. It's unsustainable.
Another big one is like where you personally see your limit being. Everyone has a certain limit where I said, if I imagine yourself 30 years from now in your ideal financial situation. And when I say your ideal financial situation 30 years from now, I mean, that could be anything. That's so much room that I'm surprised not everyone answers with, well, in my ideal 30 years from now, I could be a billionaire. And that's not realistic for every single person. But I find that most people tend to undervalue. They say, oh, 30 years from now, maybe I can make 70K. It's like, I mean, you could do anything 30 years from now. Why do you feel limited to that amount? Why do you feel limited to that? And it goes back to what I was saying earlier with, if you have this belief around, I can't go back to school, or I can't take a course or one of these certification programs, or starting a business, or getting a mentor, or reading books, or learning. If you see that as like not an option for yourself, then you'll naturally be limited to what you know. And if what you know is the job you've had, and if you're currently, let's say you're currently making 40K, then for you, any 70K and above is like a big deal. But for somebody who sees that there's so many options, there's so many things that you could do, the sky's kind of becomes a limit. And this can really affect people when they, you hear the classic story of like somebody wins the lottery and within a couple of years they're broke again. Yeah. It's like, that's a real thing. Yeah. And it's because they have this idea in their mind that there's somebody who, when they look at their bank account, they expect to see whatever, $1,000. And so when they look at it and they see $1 million, something triggers in their mind to just start spending. Yeah. And they'll rationalize and they'll come up. Yeah. This has happened to me when for a long time I got used, I would open my bank account and I would see $500. And that was for years. That was my situation for years. And then one day I got a new job. I started saving more. And I started buying things that I didn't need. In the moment I would rationalize it. It would be like this, these turmeric pills, they'll make me think more clearly and I'll feel better. And yeah, I totally need these. Or this new pillowcase, yeah, that'll help me sleep better. And it was all these weird rationalizations to just spend money. But then once you start looking at it, it's like, oh, I'm just doing that because I'm uncomfortable having more than $500. Yeah. That can keep you stuck for quite a long time.
So how did you kind of recalibrate yourself to be, raise the bar and say, well, how did you kind of set those internal limits or internal boundaries to say, wait, this is what we want to, like, we kind of are trying to level up each time here. But with that emotional part that might even be, a subconscious part that might be like, uncomfortable with the amount of money, or just feeling like there's a part of you that just feels like, wow, we have all, like, holy cow, we did it, we raised, and it's not in alignment with the kind of more advanced or more intelligent parts of you that are like, hey, we actually have these goals to look forward to that we're trying to work towards.
There's many ways to do it. One way that I did it was visualization practices, where I would just literally imagine myself walking around like some rich part of town and wearing like nice clothing, like looking at my bank account and seeing more money, imagining like people that I work with saying like, thank you, great job, everything was like going well. And I would imagine this image of like value going out and value coming in, where I would be helping people, and then like the rest of
the byproduct was the money coming in. Yeah,
that was like, one is visualization practice. Another exercise that I thought was hilarious, I got this from a YouTuber. He said, if you go to a fancy watch store, a jewelry store, and just say, what is the most expensive watch you have? I'd like to see it. And then they bring out the watch, and then you look at it for a minute and you go, it's not expensive enough. Thanks. And you leave. And what that does is a couple of things. Like, one is like, just trains your mind to be able to say like, okay, I am able to like ask for the most expensive thing, and then look at it and go, not what I was looking for. Only 10,000? Not today. And as funny as that sounds, it just gets you in the mind of like,
it's a big subconscious release in a way to physically go in there and feel the energy of asking for it and doing it.
Because I mean, people listening to this might think that's a joke. There are real people that really do that. Like, they're out looking for a 20K watch. They go into the store. Oh, it's only 10K. Sorry. They leave. Yeah. that's a real situation.
Yeah,
And so just stepping into that is one. I've heard of people that go test drive really nice cars, and they just like, they're sitting there driving this like 200K car, and they tell the dealer like, I'll think about it, and they go home. And the whole idea of the process is to feel like this is possible, and that it's like, this isn't that strange. Now, that a lot of those examples are more on the materialistic side, and money doesn't always have to mean nice watches or cars or clothes or anything like that. It could also mean just helping people. It could also mean having like a big influence. It could also mean being able to contribute to your community in some way. And so, I mean, you could sit there and visualize big projects, big charity donations, like imagining yourself, you hear that famous story of Jim Carrey where he wrote a $10 million check and just had a $10 million check in his pocket as a reminder of like, this is possible.
Right.
And all of those things I think do work because they operate at the level of shifting your subconscious beliefs.
Yeah, I think for me, what I tend to use myself and with clients too is to do parts work, to understand the parts of me that are spending frivolously or the parts of me that feel like they can't earn more money, and just really get to connect with them and understand kind of where it comes from, why they feel that way. And then that helps to give me a sense in the day-to-day of when do I feel that coming over me? Is it when I'm going to work? Is it when I'm going over my budget, trying to pay bills and just overwhelmed by it? And then when I start to put some time aside to think, okay, well, how can I make my financial situation better? Just to feel what I'm feeling in that moment. Does it feel hopeless? Okay, well, where's that hopelessness in the body? Let me focus on it. Why does that hopelessness feel like it wants to overwhelm me, or why does it feel so heavy? And just to work with those things emotionally to create space to stay grounded in a deeper core me. Because I think all of us at our core feel very free and confident. And so if you meet these parts with curiosity, instead of judging them, instead of identifying with them and saying, I'm stuck in these parts, it's a completely different ball game. And then you're kind of taking your internal family and you're settling it down and you're coaching it and you're helping it. And in that way, you're all in alignment that, hey, okay, maybe I do have some fear, or maybe this does feel uncomfortable for me, but let's try it, or let's go with it because it's going to be best for what's for us long term.
That's a good point about like when you're going through your day, everyone's going to have unique trigger points. Maybe it's when you're literally paying the bills or when you're getting the bills. Maybe it's when you're out grocery shopping and it's like you're trying to make that decision between the name brand thing and the off brand thing. Whatever that moment is for you, you can do as Jim was saying, write it all down and keep a good note of here's all the 5, 10, 20 situations in my week, in my month that tend to trigger that anxiety for me. And then look at what are you thinking? What are you feeling in those moments? Like if you're at the grocery store and you're trying to decide between the name brand thing and the off brand thing, or if you're at the checkout line and you see the total bill coming up and you're like, oh, I guess I have to pay it now. If there's anxiety in that moment, what is being thought? What are the thoughts that you're having? Are you, even if they're not totally conscious and totally obvious, take a moment to reflect. What are you thinking in that moment? Because as we always say, what you think is what you feel.
Yeah.
And so when you can shift that to a more reasonable perspective, then a lot of those feelings shift as well. A great example that I use from David Burns is speak to yourself the way you would speak to a friend. Like, let's say that you write down your thoughts one day and you notice that you're thinking things like, I could never make more money. I'm not valuable. I'm going to be stuck in this situation forever. Things like that. Could you imagine like your friend, good friend of yours that you actually care about comes up to you and they're like, hey, man, I've been feeling really bad about money. What do you think? And you turn to them and you look them in the eye and you're like, you're not valuable. You're never going to make money. You're going to be stuck in this situation. Could you imagine? No, you never say that. So speak to yourself the way you would speak to a friend. And what you'll find is that a natural wisdom comes out. Like that natural, compassionate, caring part of you will come out and say the right things. And that can help to clear up a lot of those negative emotions.
Yeah, and another way, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about this. Another way to kind of understand the thoughts, if you don't understand the belief, but you're just having these thoughts, is you talk about a strategy called "What would I have to believe if I was thinking that?" Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah,
and how to use it?
It's just a big question that you ask. Like if you're currently having the thought, I'm never going to be able to make more money, or this is like too expensive, it's going to bankrupt me, or whatever thought that you're having about money or about yourself, ask the question, okay, what would I need to believe in order to have a thought like this? Because underneath that thought is some belief, some kind of deeper perspective. And when you can identify that deeper perspective, that helps tremendously, especially if you realize that that underlying belief is oftentimes irrational or just distorted. You know, we're going to have a video coming out soon talking about the common cognitive distortions, and these are just common ways that your mind tends to bend reality to a distorted negative version of things, and that'll obviously make you feel bad. So be aware that when you're thinking about money or thinking about yourself as it relates to money, there's all these little trappings where your brain distorts reality or over exaggerates things, or just kind of makes you feel trapped in these irrational, illogical ways of thinking about things. And the more that you can clarify what you're thinking and what are those beliefs that are fueling the thoughts, and what are some more rational, accurate ways of thinking, a lot of those emotions can clear up rather quickly once you get clear on them.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of distill down to give some practical steps here, because we covered a lot. This is a huge topic, and I love it. So I just want to reiterate that this is not about money. This is about your beliefs towards money, and this anxiety is no different than any other anxiety. The future predicting you're doing, or the fear of what might happen in the future, is the anxiety. So as far as somebody who feels stuck and can't make more money, where do we start with them? Like, what can they do right off the bat?
I would say definitely write down all the common situations where you feel triggered, whether it's that one friend that every time you see them, they talk about how much money they're making, or that one store that when you go to, maybe it's the grocery store, every time you go to, you feel a little anxious about spending money. Maybe it's that one bill that tends to come up. Maybe it's every time you just look at a credit card and you're reminded of how much debt you have, or something like that. Write down all the common situations and parts of your life that trigger feelings of anxiety or just uncomfortable feelings as they relate to money. And once you are clear on, let's say you have a list of 10 things, then I would imagine that those 10 situations probably make up most of the anxiety that you're feeling in a given month.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's right there off the bat. That's pretty crazy, right? If you can just address those 10 situations, then 60-80% of the anxiety you feel in a given month around money could be decreased right there. And so once you are clear about those situations, as we said, write down the thoughts you're having during them, get clear on the thoughts that you're having, and then write down the more rational thoughts that could be replaced, right? What is that more rational perspective? And oftentimes, if you're having trouble coming up with a more rational perspective, imagine that you're talking to your friend of yours. Imagine that you're trying to tell them something supportive, something that'll help them, something true, not like a BS nice thing, but something true and yet still supportive. And you'll often come up with what you should be telling yourself.
Yeah, and if you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel like you're just stuck in this way of thinking, that's clear that there's kind of an emotional part that's just overwhelming you and doesn't feel safe, or doesn't have the trust or the safety to back off and be soothed. So that's when some parts work. Getting in with a coach or a therapist would be extremely helpful, so that you can connect with this part of you, kind of understand where it came from, and learn to build trust with it, so that it doesn't feel either so scared or so much like there's nobody at the helm that it needs to be in control and at the helm of it. As far as the other side of money anxiety, something about along the lines of like the guilt of spending money or feeling like you need to hold on to your money, that sort of anxiety can be addressed in a really similar way as far as if you want to use and integrate parts work into that. Meaning that the fear of letting go of money, it's pretty obvious what the belief is under that. But to ease that anxiety of spending or spending, certain spending with intention and buying quality or things like that, integrating some parts work into that to help relieve that anxiety of, hey, this is an investment, and really seeing down the line instead of being overwhelmed and frozen in that situation. Because both of these situations, the anxiety is typically about being stuck in a situation. Do you have any other tips on how to deal with the guilt of spending money or the anxiety around letting go of money?
I think a lot of that comes from just this feeling of I can never make more, right? Or it's
right.
If I spend this money, then I'm just, making a bad decision no matter what I'm spending it on. And so oftentimes there needs to be a little bit of contextual thinking of like, well, what are you spending? Are you spending it on something that you don't need? Which in that case, those anxious feelings may be helpful. They may be trying to tell you like, hey, you don't need this, slow down. Or is it something that you really do need, but maybe because of that, it'll have a change in your life. Maybe you're trying to go back to school. Maybe you're trying to go on a big trip. Maybe you're trying to invest in yourself through a therapist or some kind of other form of improving your life. And there's going to be some resistance to, you don't deserve this. You're not capable of this. And likewise, all those thoughts that you're having as it relates to the purchase you're about to make, just break them down. Like, look at is this thought true? Is it rational? And most importantly, would I tell this to a friend of mine? And if you can come up with an alternate thought that is both true and that you would feel comfortable telling a good friend of yours, then oftentimes that'll be a much better perspective than whatever's floating around right now.
Absolutely. And just in terms of equating money to status or worth or anything like that, I think if you're not aware if you're doing that right now, look at somebody who's rich and see how you feel emotionally when you look at them. Think about purchasing things that are outside of your scope, like you were talking about, outside of your scope of what would be normal for you. And then go the opposite. Look at somebody who's homeless or who doesn't make a lot of money, or look at your friends who maybe don't have their financial situation put together. What do you equate with that situation? Do you feel like they're less than other people? Do you feel like they're weak? Do you feel like this? These are all clear indicators of some kind of judgment being a cognitive distortion. So there's some part inside of you, some thought pattern inside of you that is very, very subjective and very, very distorted, that's equating worth with money. Because money, again, is different than no other currency. So maybe the person who's low on money spends a lot of time giving or volunteering in that way. And so in that way, you find that the currency kind of evens itself out. But for some reason, your mindset is really focused on money. And again, be aware, like in our society, we're a capitalist society here in America, like there is a kind of sociological
social
emphasis.
Pressure.
Yeah, social pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. And be aware of that this may be so deep in you that coming out of it might be a gradual process. But if you feel these money blocks, if you feel money anxiety, it's completely worth it.
Yeah.
Because once you break through that money anxiety, like my good friend and mentor Ennis said, the sky's the limit.
I think that's all we can cover today. I loved your point about
It's a lot.
looking at someone with more money or less and judging them as like, oh, they're somehow a bad person.
Yeah, noticing the thoughts you're having, noticing the feelings you're having. You might surprise yourself with how dark your judgments are.
Yeah. You ever seen that one comedian? I think it was George Carlin, where like you're driving on the highway and anyone going slower than you is an idiot, and anyone going faster than you is like insane.
Is a maniac.
Yeah. And I think that people have a similar mindset around money, where it's like, if anyone's got more than me or less than me, they suck.
Yeah.
if you know, and
or if you don't have as much as they have, I suck.
Right.
And that's, both of those are complete distortions and worth investing the time and resources into exploring, because those are blocks.
100%.
Blocks. So guys, just remember, we're Inner Solutions. For Ennis, I'm Jim. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Please like and subscribe. And just remember, no matter where you are, no matter how many blocks you may have, no matter how intense it is, you're never, ever stuck. You might just need some support. Thank you.